That's good. I kind of want to stay on that vein of thought of man tools of leadership and how to empower people. I think that's so good. But if I want to talk a little bit about your transition in worship, those people that are watching, you have a beard. They may not recognize you fully, and I want to just kind of give you in a humbling way credit where credit is due. I know you've done so much in your journey of worship. You've written many songs. You've been with many other worship leaders, people that we look up to, people that we listen to. One of the most recent ones that are just it just comes. I'm horrible with songs to begin with, but I don't like Dios te lo imposible. That's one of the songs that many people kind of recognize you for, and many of the people that I come in contact with, we talk a lot about that. Like, how does that transition happen? How do we humbly get there? And I use that word in capital. How do we humbly get to that place? And I don't know if you can kind of share with us. I know you said you've been doing it full time since 18, but what was that transition like for you? Like, how did that happen? For those that don't know, how did you kind of transition into that? And what did that open door look like? And how did that opportunity present itself to you?
Yeah, man. This is one of the questions that I find the hardest to answer because um, I know that there are a lot of people watching and a lot of people who are somehow connected to whatever it is that I do, that they have big dreams, big aspirations, and maybe even God has spoken a word, like a prophetic word over someone. You know, God's going to take you to the nations, or he's going to use you to minister in front of millions, or thousands or whatever. So I find it hard because on one end, it's like, I started when I was really young. I put a lot of work into it. I put a lot of effort into it. I would say the majority of the time I didn't realize that I was putting work into it. It's just that I love it so much. I love songwriting. I love doing music. It has never been like a job to me, like where I say I need to give 3 hours a week or 3 hours a day to practicing because this is for my career. Like, I never really felt like that so much as I put 3 or 4 hours a day into practicing, but because it was therapeutic to me and because I love it and I enjoy it and I love creating and I love music, I love art. So it's always hard for me because I feel like people want concrete ideas and concrete evidence and concrete steps on how to get from point A to point B. And it's more of an abstract idea than it is a concrete idea, because the abstract idea is I love art and I love art as a communication tool. Like, this is the way I communicate. This is the way I process. This is, if I need to process emotions, I'm going to do it through music. Sitting at a piano and just playing, I can play for hours. If I'm going to process thoughts, I process through music. If I'm going to process spiritual development, I process through music. It's just kind of how it works for me. So it's a very abstract concept. Like, it's more of an art and a communication tool than it is this rigid process, like this linear process of career development. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of where I get. It makes it difficult sometimes to explain my process, but and it's gonna sound cliche, but I really do feel like it was a God thing, and the reason I say that sounds cliche is because I feel like a lot of people kind of use that as, oh man, this is a God thing. He just kind of set things, and they just kind of, when in reality they were hustling and they were knocking on doors and they were beating down doors and they were doing marketing strategies and I'm not trying to sound like the the underdog here, because that's really not it. I don't think my story is an underdog story. I think my story is more of a God had to humble the what out of me. He had to humble me. I started off really, really arrogant. I was PK. I was entitled. I love music, but I'm very a non-linear thinker. So I had a poor work ethic. I mean, you name it, and I did it when it comes to sabotaging your life and sabotaging your ability to earn money or whatever. So I very much was kind of on this trajectory of just throwing my life away and having a bad attitude. When it came to ministry, I didn't know what it meant to love people, what it meant to serve people, what it meant to be a disciple maker. That was not in any part of my thinking. And yet God took me on this path of restoration because, my parents got a divorce when I was 16. That really messed me up. It drove me into deep depression, into deep hatred towards my parents. Long story short, God healed me. He restored me, and he started me on this process of humbling, being humbled, being this idea of like a humble approach. It's kind of like I like to call it confident humility, because this idea of humility is like, oh, you just got to be quiet and you got to be reserved, and that's not really it. Like, I'm very, very confident in the giftings that God has given me, maybe more so in the vision that God has given me, and in the mission that I have. Like, I consider myself a missional Christian, so I am very confident in that. But I'm humble in the sense that I'm always willing to learn, and I haven't bought. This is how I describe humility. I haven't bought into my own hype. And there was a time that I was buying into my own hype, like I was believing what everybody told. Oh, I love the way you sing, or I love the way you do this or that, and I believed it. Like I'm like, well, maybe I am kind of good, and maybe I am legit, and maybe, and I just refuse to buy into the hype, man. I'm thankful, but here's what I realized: when people say, "Oh, you do such a great job, and your music is so amazing, and I love the way you sing," or whatever, a compliment, I realize that what they're trying to say, but they're just not saying it this way. But what I hear is, I see God in you, and I see the glory of God through you. And that's Colossians 3 verse 3, which is, my life is hidden with Christ in God. So when people tell me that, I realize that what they're saying is, I see God in you. I see the glory of God working through you. And that makes a whole lot of sense as to why people are so impacted by the things that I do, because that's what I think happened, man. Honestly, the way the opportunity opened up is very illogical. I wasn't knocking on doors. I was making music because I love doing this. I genuinely love doing this. I tell people all the time, like, for instance, people will say, "Oh, I don't like listening to my own music," or people will get in my car and then I'll be listening to my own music, and they're like, "You're listening to your own music?" I'm like, I do this because I love it. Why would I not listen to it? Like, if you're making music just because you want to earn a living and you don't absolutely love it, then I think you missed the point. Like, the point of art is to express, and I write songs that I want to listen to. You know what I mean? And I don't make any apologies because I listen to my own music. And honestly, I don't. To me, I think a lot of people say, "Well, that's pride. Like, you really bought into your own hype." No, I do this because I love doing this. I happen to make money. Like, it just so happened that I got an opportunity to be on a huge stage, and my music has been exposed to the masses. Millions of people. This is not in my imagination. This has actually happened. But man, all of that is really wasn't even part of the plan. And it's a footnote to what it is that I love doing, which is, I love making music. I love expressing myself through music. So for me, that's kind of like been the process. I tell people, man, look, if you can stick to two things, which is loving God and loving others as yourself, you're going to be fine. Like, you don't need to knock down doors. You don't need to hustle and try to market. Like, this is so contrary to our culture, because this is counterculture. Our culture says, man, you need to hustle. You need to put yourself out there. You need to market yourself. You need to become a marketing genius. You need to become a guru, whatever. And hey, maybe that's for somebody watching. I'm not saying that that's not for you. What I am trying to say is, if your question is how did you get to where you're at, and how can I have that same impact that you have? Well, my impact is about the kingdom. So for me, it's like, I love getting the opportunity to share my message, which is the testimony of Jesus Christ, like the power of Jesus Christ to transform and to purify and to sanctify one's mind, and so that they can be free to worship God, with confidence. So if your question is how do you do that, man, I say you just dive headfirst into doing ministry, into loving people, into encouraging people, and let God put you in front of the millions if that's the case. But my plan wasn't, okay, step 1, write a song. Step 2, let it be listened to by hundreds of millions of people. It's just kind of how it worked out. And I feel bad, when I get that question, that I don't have a better answer. It's just like, man, I don't know. Like, this is what I love doing. I'm so thankful that I get the opportunity to have my music be in front of millions of people. And I'm so thankful, man. But I don't even know how this happened. And I just sit back and I'm in awe at how God does whatever he wants to do. Like, his ways are perfect. And I don't feel like I was knocking down doors. Like, in a sense, it's like, I don't even know if I quote unquote earned it. I didn't come from the right family. I find a lot of artists that they come from the right family, and that's why they're so popular, or they have, or their dad's church is just like a big, massive church, and they got, this great exposure. And I don't have any of that. Again, I'm not trying to sound like the underdog here, because I don't think that's my story. I think my story is simply God's favor, being at the right place at the right time. That's it. How do you formulate that?
Yeah, that's awesome, because I know we briefly talked about it, very brief, and again when we first met. And that's why I asked the question. Because I'm with you. I 100% agree with you. I don't believe there's a formula. I think that there are certain aspects of our life that do require strategy and methods and structure and systems. I believe that. But then there are other things that no matter what you do, if you're not called for it. I believe that, just like you said it, man. There's it's hard because people, I don't get the question because of me. Some people say, hey man, what do you think, or what do you think has to happen, or you've met this person, what did they say? And it's like, I think your mind is in the wrong place. I think if you're trying to get somewhere for the sake of yourself, to kind of feel something for you or do something for you, especially when it comes to certain things in ministry, I think, like you said, I think we've missed the point. When we look in the Bible, we see that Peter wasn't looking to be a disciple. Jesus finds him on a boat. And if we see certain miracles, though some people were going after Jesus for a miracle, there's certain miracles that I actually read into and look for, that Jesus finds them. And I think that if we even take that, and we hear this in preachings, we've heard it for years, that your gifting will make make room for you, and that if it's for you, that it would open that opportunity. But getting deeper into it, of like, what does that really mean? What does that really mean? How does that happen? At least in my life, and I believe in my wife's life, there are certain things that happen, and we didn't ask for it. Another thing that just quickly comes to mind, Mary didn't ask to be pregnant with the Messiah, and there are things that you have and you possess and you carry, not because you necessarily asked for it, but because God trusts you with it. And if God trusts you with it, we have to be good stewards of it, eventually, for that thing to be exposed.